Hi, this is James Valvis, and I'm going to be reading a poem today. It's an unpublished poem. It's never appeared in any magazine or um, book, and I'm going to discuss why that's so. I fear that this introduction will take up a lot longer than the poem itself will. It's not a very long poem, but I have a lot to say about it. The poem is called Roots, and it's based on an incident that happened in my childhood. Um, I was repeatedly bullied and beaten by various groups when I was young. I grew up in a ghetto, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and this kind of stuff happened all the time. It was the 70s and the early 80s, and things were a little more violent back then. Uh, the anti-bully campaigns had not come into being then, and generally speaking, kids were attacked and mistreated in all kinds of ways that is not as prevalent today, and I think that's generally a good thing. It's not a universally good thing. There are problems with it. We have protected children who seem divorced from the real world and the real struggles in the world. So that's a unintended consequence of protecting children more. But generally speaking, it's a good thing. I've sent the poem out to quite a few places, and it's never been picked up, and I don't believe at this point that it ever will. The last place I sent it to, and I just got back the rejection a couple of days ago, uh, told me that they don't publish my kind of material or something along those lines. It was a terse rejection of the poems, um, because let's face it, because it's not a politically correct poem. The poem speaks about black violence against a white person, a child, and in this climate, such a thing is not permissible. It's not just not acceptable, but it's not permissible. You can't write that poem and publish it in just about any literary magazine in the country anymore. And this is, to me, this is a disaster. Um, uh, I've written lots of poems in which, based on being bullied as a child, uh, lots of short stories as well. Almost all the big Alabama short stories have bullying somewhere within the context of the story. I have no trouble getting those pieces published because the bullying happens mostly between white characters, um, or at least nondescript characters. Uh, and yet I see something terribly wrong with a mindset that says black people cannot be equally culpable of bad behavior as white people. I find that vaguely racist. It's racist in a weird way, in a paternal way. It says, we're going to pretend that any kind of misbehavior by minorities is not possible, because we're so afraid of either offending them or creating a backlash against them. But and I can see that point, except I also see the totality of my own work, and within the totality of my own work, there are poems in which white people behave badly, and there are poems in which other people behave badly, and there are poems where white people behave well and black people behave well, or gay people behave well, whoever. And so within the totality of my work, it's very it's a complex vision. It's humanity is neither all good nor bad. Certain groups within humanity are neither all good nor bad. There's certainly nothing racist about anything I've ever written. and I'm offended by any implication that anything I've ever written is racist. Uh, However, this poem, it does deal with black on white racism, but it also deals with a certain other complex problem in society, which is that rich white people, more privileged white people, as the kids like to say these days, they pass off the costs of their virtue signaling onto poorer whites. In other words, what I'm saying is the rich people, the rich white people, will support affirmative action and all the kinds of stuff like that, knowing that their children are going to have no trouble getting into college, or they're not going to worry about whether they're going to succeed in life or have the opportunities to succeed in life. And so they don't care if the white person who's coming from a much more impoverished or unfortunate situation is unfairly discriminated against, because it doesn't cost them anything. I often call this "cost me nothing" liberalism, or "cost me nothing" progressivism. You're willing to pay the tab with somebody else's money all the time, and so the poem deals with that as well. And like I said, it's not a very long poem, so it's got a lot working at once, at the same time. And that's what you hope for with a poem. You hope that a poem will say something important on multiple levels, no matter what you're talking about. And in this case, it's social criticism. It's also social criticism of the time, of the both the book and the miniseries Roots by Alex Haley, which is a wonderful book, by the way, and a very good miniseries. I quite enjoyed it. I haven't watched it in a long time, but it was very good. And LeVar Burton was wonderful in it, who played Kunta Kinte in it, and ultimately Toby. He was renamed. So anyway, let me read the poem. Like I said, it's never been published, but I guess it's being published here for the first time, and I do hope you like it. It's called Roots. Roots. The day after the miniseries ended, they came for him. The only white boy in PS number 40. His parents out of work, too poor to send him to St. Paul's. They came after him and said, "This is for Kunta. This is for Kizzy." At home, the boy watched the episodes, horrified by the abuse blacks suffered at the hands of slave owners, who lived 5 states to the south, 100 years before his bum father jumped ship from the Greek Navy, 50 years before his Irish great-grandfather came here to escape starvation. They came for him and raked his face against the chain-link fence until it was raw, until it was bleeding. Kneed him in the crotch, broke a bottle over his head. Left him for half dead on the concrete sidewalk as rich whites, driving by in Lincolns, rolled up their windows and didn't stop or even touch the brakes. This was James Valvis reading his poem, Roots. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this poem. And God bless you.